What is up, everyone? JD Geeks here. Today I have a pretty cool Nerf Flywheel blaster. I haven't done many Flywheel blasters in the past. There's only been some secondaries and things like that. Nothing that is a primary class blaster. I have been looking a bit more into these with my fiance, the primary class flywheelers, and because of that, we decided we wanted to pick up one that I've seen some pretty good reviews on online. We just wanted to test one out, see what it was like, and on top of that, it is under 150 FPS, so it can be used in the lower FPS category classes. That's normally the lower baseline. The blaster that we are talking about today is the Maxim Pro. This is a dart zone blaster. It comes with one magazine, it comes with some safety glasses, and then it has an end strike attachment point with an adjustable buffer tube stock, some iron sights, and overall, it's a pretty decent blaster from what I've researched on it. It has a similar rev trigger to the Venom Pro, where it's on the rear part and you have to kind of push it in order to rev up the flywheels, and then you can just squeeze the trigger as much as you want. This is semi-auto instead of full auto like the Venom Pro, however. But this is a very, very cool blaster, and I'm very excited actually to see how this blaster performs. It does say here that it is supposed to reach up to 150 FPS, and then on the back it just shows some of those things that it has. So let's head over to the table, open this box up, and then we will move on to our actual testing of the blaster. I will see you at the table. Alrighty, everyone, we are now at the table with the Maxim Pro. Some things that I did bring just in case are my screwdrivers. I have 8 of the AA batteries because that is what this takes. And then I brought a worker Talon mag just because I'm curious to see how well this actually fits in, or how well that mag actually fits in the blaster. So let's open this right up. Okay. So we have some instructions right here, and then we have the iPro, some darts, the magazine, and then the end strike attachment point, buffer tube stock, and the actual blaster itself. So let's take off this wrapping and see what it's like. I will see you in a second. All right, so we just cut off all the plastic bits. So here we have the buffer tube stock. I mean, it does slide out like that, but it does seem to lock right in after that. And let's see, does it do it in the middle positions as well? Yep, so I mean, it seems like that'll do just fine. And then obviously it's just normal end strike attachment. I'm not going to take out the darts or the glasses because most people don't actually use Adventure Force darts anymore. They'll use workers or sabers, things like that. So I'm not even going to really worry about these. I might test with them just to show what it gets out of the box with the darts it comes with, but I'm not going to do any accuracy testing or anything like that with them. So let's get this box out of the way here. And here we are with the actual Maxim Pro. It has the clear shell for the body. You can see the flywheels right here. It's got this little muzzle piece. I don't know if you can fit a P-car or anything in here. Maybe a scar, or not the scar, the B-car from the Nexus Pro X, or maybe just a P-car, something like that. You got your iron sights right here. So these probably aren't anything special, but they're just some sights that you can have on here whenever you want. And then just throw on the stock right there. So one thing I will say that I have seen online is that this right here, this adapter piece, does get in the way of some end strike stocks. but the one that you have here is a buffer tube anyway, so you don't really need any other type of stock. You could just take off this part and put on your own if you want, and it should be just fine. Let's see here. So this is a pretty nice 12 round mag. It's just like most of the other ones, nothing crazy, nothing special, but it does feed in pretty nicely, and you can see through here for extra rounds or anything like that. And then let's test out the worker mags. So it does seem to kind of slide out a little bit without even tapping the mag release, which is a little concerning for me because that sits in really nicely. And then this worker mag does kind of slide out. I mean, it doesn't seem to fall out. Yeah, even when I shake it really hard, it doesn't seem to fall out. But if I do give it a good tug, it does fall. And it does seem to gravity drop as well. So at least there's that. Let's see about the normal mag. So that also does gravity drop, which is pretty nice. So I will be testing with a worker mag just to see if it does actually have any feeding issues, since it doesn't seem to actually lock in, because it does just kind of slide out like that, but I don't see why it would. So let's actually move on to some of the other parts of the blaster. So as I said earlier, this is the rev trigger right here. You will have to push your hand into it to click it and then squeeze the trigger. Right down here is the safety. Kind of a weird spot for the safety, but I mean, it is the safety. And then, so this is safe. And then if you push it in, it is on fire. So let's see, can we get a good view of, no, the writing and marker kind of block it, but you can kind of see there the trigger is linked to the pusher, so it pushes the darts into the flywheels, which are right here. So let's actually take this apart and look at the battery tray. I will see you in a second. Okay, so we now have a screwdriver here, and let's take apart the Maxim Pro and check out the internal, or the battery compartment in here. All right, so there is the eight battery tray. There are two deeper ones down in here, if you can see those springs, and then there are the two right above it, and then these four here. But if you do look right there, there is actually another screw that you can very easily undo. And if you pull that up, it does reveal an XD30 connector. I am not actually going to put a LiPo in this, because I think I did learn my lesson from the Boxer Pro, but it is cool that it at least comes with the XD30 connector, so you don't have to install one if you do decide to actually use the LiPos in here. So let's actually load up some batteries, and then after we're done loading up the batteries, I will rev it and we can see how loud it is before we move on to further testing. And there we are. So let's give it a rev. So it is definitely not as loud as I thought it would be. It could definitely be louder, but it also could be quieter. One thing I do really like about some of the newer blasters that have been coming out recently, like the Vesper and the Diana and the Lightning, things like that, is you can actually, or they pre-rev before, and then as soon as you squeeze the trigger, it'll fully rev and shoot the dart, which does give it just a tad bit more stealth aspect to it until you're actually firing the blaster. This one you do have to just rev right before, get the flywheels up to speed, And then after getting the flywheels up to speed, then you can shoot your dart. Because if you don't let them get up to speed, you're not going to be hitting the 150 FPS claims that this blaster has. So let's move on to some further testing, and we will actually test it out with the chronograph and then move on to the accuracy test. But one more quick thing, actually, I do want to go try to grab a P car and a B car to see if it will fit into this front muzzle adapter bit. I will see you in just 1 second. All right, we now have a couple of B car, or we have a B car and a couple P cars here. So I do have a worker P car just to test that out, and then the dart zone B car because it's got that thicker piece here in case that one doesn't fit. And then finally, we do have the dart zone B car. I do hope I do hope at least one of these fits, so you can add a bit of rifling to it, but my hopes aren't very high. So if we take the worker B car or P car, yeah, it just does not fit at all. It is just super loose. It's a lot of play, so that is a no-go. But maybe with this thicker end, this can, no, this also does not fit in here at all. And then our last hope, which I already know is going to be too small now that the other ones didn't fit. Yeah, even this B car here, there's just too much play, not enough to actually hold this in. There might be a way to modify a front end for it in order to take it, but for now, that means that this thing has to go without rifling. So that is how I will actually be chronographing and doing FPS testing for this blaster, is just with the stock configuration, since it obviously can't take any type of rifling. So let's move on to the chronograph testing and then the accuracy test, and then we'll wrap up our final review. I will see you at the chronograph. What is up, everyone? We are now at the chronograph with the Maxim Pro. So we are going to start off with 5 of the Adventure Force darts that it comes with, then 5 workers, 5 saber heavy tees, 5 of the bamboo darts, and then 5 of the older dart zone bamboos, and 5 of the Nitro Shot Plus darts. I'm not going to be talking much because this is a flywheeler, so it is going to be pretty loud. So we're just going to FPS test and then go over the numbers a bit later. So with the Adventure Force darts, it is hitting right around that 150 marker, which is pretty nice. So now let's move on to some normal worker Gen 3s. So with the normal worker Gen 3s, it is actually hitting above 150 FPS. The darts are brand new worker darts, so if you use some used ones, they might not get as good of grip on the flywheels, but it is hitting pretty hard with those worker darts, 10 FPS above the lower 150 cap. So that is definitely something to look out for. But moving on to the saber heavy T darts, let's see how these do. So about the same as the Adventure Force darts with the saber heavy tees, but those are definitely going to be a bit more accurate because of the heavier weight. So now moving on to the 1.2 gram bamboo darts. So this blaster was very, very consistent with those bamboo darts. It was around maybe 3 to 4 FPS change, which is absolutely insane for 5 darts. It very, very little fluctuation, which is very nice. So now we're moving on to the older dart zone bamboos. Let's see how these do in here. I'm actually assuming these might be a little bit slower because of the less contact with the flywheel. So let's see here. So it was actually a surprise to me with how hard those were shooting. That first dart definitely seemed like it wasn't that good, or maybe the bambooing was just a little bit better, so there was less that touched the flywheels, but it was definitely a lower FPS. Those other ones were around 160 though, which was pretty consistent and pretty good other than that first dart, closer to the normal workers than I expected though. So now we got some Nitro Shot Plus darts. Let's see how these do in here. So those darts definitely had a bit more variation than, let's say, the bamboo darts, but they were still very, very consistent and very, very good. And I'm actually kind of worried for this blaster for the accuracy test because it doesn't have any type of rifling to put spin on any of the darts. But I think overall and in general, it should do just fine when it comes to the accuracy test. So let's actually see how it does, and then we'll give our final review. I will see you at the target.
What is up, everyone? We are now at the target with the Maxim Pro. This blaster is one that's available on store shelves, as I've said before. It's a flywheeler, so it is going to be a little loud, so I won't be talking, but I will say how it does overall accuracy wise. I am using 15 Saber Heavy T's, so let's see how it does. A little low. So although it is a very loud blaster and clearly not that accurate for the price, it is pretty good. I have heard of people taking off this front muzzle piece and putting on a B car or a P car just to add a little bit more spin on the darts to make them more accurate. So if that is something that you can do, that is a good option. And this thing is actually pretty good for the price in my opinion, but I personally wouldn't use this in a game. So that does actually wrap up the accuracy test of this blaster. So let's head back to the display room. I'll see you there.
We are now back in the display room with the Maxim Pro. This blaster did actually shock me with how accurate it is for a flywheel blaster with no B car, P car, anything like that on it. It did do very, very well. And the fact that you can pick this up for around $50, and it comes with it's a semi-automatic blaster hitting around 140 to 150, and it's a semi-auto flywheeler that's pretty relative FPS wise, at least. A lot of the lower games are right around 150. So this is definitely something cool to pick up, especially if you're just getting into flywheelers or you're not sure if you will like it very much. This is a cool one to get. Some issues that people do have, including myself, is I don't really like the boxiness of this blaster or the hole here through the magwell. But one thing I do actually enjoy, I do like the back strap for when you're shooting a blaster. You just push in on that to rev the flywheels. I personally do like that. I know some people do have an issue with it. And if you do, you can get a kit to mod it to be a 2-stage trigger versus having this back strap here. And if you don't like the semi-auto function of this blaster, you can actually get a worker kit to make this a full auto function or functional blaster as well, which is definitely a cool thing to do. This blaster is honestly a pretty great deal. I did get this in case any of my friends or the people that I know wanted to try a flywheeler but didn't want to purchase a really expensive one like the Protean. And we'll see how people actually like this during games. I did have one person try it and they did like it a lot, but I am not a flywheeler guy myself personally. There are a few coming out that I am looking forward to, but this one here is definitely not something that I would personally use. If you do have any questions or comments about any of my blasters, reviews, or anything like that, or even any recommendations, please leave that in the comment section below. This is JD Geeks signing off. I'll see you in the next one.